have a lecture in a place like this. Thank you also to Irena Laator Pejović, who is in the audience, that I can present my book and have a talk within your exhibition. So this evening will be a double aim. At the one hand, giving you a brief insight into the book that was published a bit more than a year ago in English and in German, so it has both languages, and speak about I think interesting encounter which I discovered about 5 years ago, and now we developed it and are going further on this topic. I want to make a small remark about me. Sometimes my hands start to tremble. And don't think I'm terribly nervous at the moment, it's just my body. Sometimes it trembles. It's a family disease and I deal with it as good as possible. So I would like to introduce you, to show you this encounter. And I just have to ask, English is okay for everybody, yeah? That's wonderful, because it's impossible for me to speak just a bit of Serbian. So when I met Irena Laator for the first time in the summer of 2019, we were both dealing with female city building, so to say. More precisely, city building by constructing books. Irena Laator Pejović was preparing her exhibition for the Commonwealth. Pizan's Livre de la cité des dames, in English, the book of the city of ladies, and I know it is also translated into Serbian, so maybe you all or many of you know this book. I think it is a very important book and everybody should know it. So let's have a first look. Just to get the first impression, on the right hand you have one of the autographs of Christine de Pizan's Livre de la cité des dames, and on the left hand a brief insight into knowledge of limited responsibility. Right behind of us we can see them in original, in a bit other setting, but it's the same art piece. To go a bit into it, just to get a feeling of this medieval book. At first glance, I saw so many parallels and silent relationships between these two authors, Irena Laator and Christine de Pizan, that it left me no peace to dig deeper. When I met Irena Laator in the studio in Cetinje in summer 2022, so last summer, it was my first trip to Montenegro. To be honest, now it's my second, and now I'm here. We decided to develop an essay about these hidden threads through a period of 600 years of European history. We may find knots in the form of the book, in the topic of the city, and in the awareness of responsibility. So let us try this narrative and go back from Cetinje and Podgorica, Montenegro, the place where Irena Laator works and lives, via Linz, Austria, the place of the exhibition and the vibrant university, and Basel, Switzerland, the place where I did my research, wrote the text and developed my book. To 14th, 15th century Paris, France, where at the Burgundian court Christine de Pizan wrote and designed her manuscript, or better to say her manuscripts. And now we are doing this in the Nadezhda Petrović Art Gallery in Čačak, a wonderful memory site as well, in the midst of Irena Laator's exhibition, Expanses of Love. Knowledge of the Limited Responsibility Society, the art piece you have been seeing for a while, takes a leading role there. It is in the first part of the exhibition, and I will come back to this later. To give a first idea of this relationship between the two aesthetic concepts, I offer a peek into Christine de Pizan's studio. The opening miniature of one of the autographs of Le Livre de la Cité des Dames. It is MS 607. It is in the National Library in France, in Paris. Shows us a two-part scenery, one leading to an interior setting and the other to an outdoor site. So we have one part here and one part here. This miniature is rather small, 12 to 17 centimeters, nevertheless rich in telling details. The left half of the picture introduces the viewer to a mysterious encounter between Christine de Pizan and three female virtues. Christine de Pizan is presented as a confident and attentive person in blue dress, surrounded by books in a chapel-like studiolo. She was just standing up to welcome three elegantly dressed and crowned female persons. They carry attributes which reveal them as allegorical figures. Combined with the information from the text, we can Dame Rectitude and Dame Justice, in English, Lady Reason, Lady Rectitude and Lady Justice. So reason, rectitude, justice are the virtues which encounter and meet Christine de Pizan. Before I give some hints about the meaning and relevance of this opening scene and the content of Le Livre de la Cité des Dames, let us have a glimpse at the second part of the miniature, so this one. In an outer space that appears as a garden or a field, we see the building of a wall, and it is the city wall of the future city of ladies, as we know from the text. Again, we see Christine de Pizan on the left side, now with a measure's trowel in her right hand and an angle measure close at hand at her feet. What is about the light? I think it's better without the light, so for me it's okay. Okay, so we have this. So, Christine de Pizan working. And now here we are in the room of working. She is supported by one of the female figures. Maybe somebody is having the micro on in the Zoom room. Yeah. Please switch the micro off. Thank you. So, let's come back to the picture. So we have Christine de Pizan here and one of these female figures here. According to the text, we know it is Lady Reason, who helps to dig the ground and build the fundamentals of the future city, and who guides the first part of the book. So, what are the special features of Le Livre de la Cité des Dames, and what can be discovered about Irena Laator's artistic concept when we look at it against this background? So, I don't speak about influences or something like this. I just try to make a view from here to there and from there to here, and see what can be discovered if we make this visual dialogue. So, about the story. The framing story, I think all of you know, but just to be sure, the framing story tells how Christine de Pizan, during her reading, encounters a certain Matthäus, and is so irritated by his misogynistic statement that she falls into a deep sadness. While struggling with these thoughts, three crowned women appear to her. In further conversation, they reveal themselves as Lady Reason, Lady Rectitude, Lady Justice, and announce that they wish to build a city together with her, of course, an imaginary city. But we will see the power of imagination is very important for this book and for the pictures as well. The book consists of three parts, each guided by one of the three virtues. Lady Reason begins the construction of this allegorical city of women by digging the foundations, which means, first of all, to dispel the prevailing prejudices regarding women's alleged lack of skills and moral weakness. The other chapters tell how the city is first erected, stone by stone, in part 1, then how the interior of the city is executed, part 2, and finally how it is completed with battlement and towers, part 3. The chapters from part 2 onwards also describe which women are chosen to inhabit the newly built city. Now there is an interesting point. The building blocks of its walls, so we see them here, these blocks, are the outstanding achievements and benevolent deeds of the numerous female figures handed down from mythology, the Bible, and history. The carefully composed book thus offers I think the important bridge to Irena Laator's artistic concept is the mode, how the world of books on the one side, we have it here, the world of individual research, of artistic sensitivity, and the world of politics, we have it here, of common life, of responsibility on the other, they are separated, but nevertheless they are connected. And this connection, I think, is the important point. The areas are both clearly separated from each other and have their own laws. Of course, reading is another, and making art is another skill than doing politics or economics. And they are related to each other in many, partly obvious, partly concealed ways. Better to say they should be linked. I show now this picture, so to say, cut out to see the details more precise. So, on the one hand, the two parts, so looking into the composition. On the one hand, the two parts are clearly separated. Two halves of the picture plane, one interior and one outer space, two different stories. On the other hand, they are linked by the surrounding landscape, so we have grass here and we have sky here and there. By the open archway, here, it's an open door. From the study to the building site, but most of all by Christine herself. It is not just the same clothing that correlates the two figures with each other. They are also composed like a parallelogram. So, in other words, her action, which starts with reading and continues with communicating, this here, reading and communicating, accomplishes itself by building the future city of ladies, which we have here. This means reading and working, the world of books and the world of politics are intertwined. From here, I think it is just a short step to Irena Laator's artistic oeuvre, in which many pieces consist of books. We also have a lot of books in this exhibition. Also book pages, and there are also newspapers in some of her works. But this is only one side, the obvious, so to speak, material aspect of her work. The other side is the way how they are linked with contemporary economical and political life. And both aspects, the aesthetic quality and the ethical demands, are intertwined. While I developed this text about the relationships between these two artistic contexts last summer, Irena's work in my mind's eye, I discovered more and more parallels and intriguing topics. Each oeuvre, that of Christine and that of Irena, became more and more telling simply due to the fact that it was seen from the perspective of the earth. In the framework of the lecture, I can give just some hints. Nevertheless, I hope you will enjoy. So let us turn still the opening scene of the Livre de la Cité de Dames in mind to Irena Laator's knowledge of the limited responsibility society, a focal art piece, I would like to say, within her artistic oeuvre. You have seen it from the beginning, but a little hidden in the background. Now we change roles and bring the knowledge of the limited responsibility society to the fore. Of course, as an art piece of the 21st century, a multi-part installation in a special setting, it looks completely different. But nevertheless, so my thesis, their conceptual similarities are striking. The shape of Laator's city changes over time. Developed in 2009 and exhibited for the first time in a group exhibition in Milan, Italy, it was presented in various constellations and is still growing today. Since these buildings are books, the viewer is also interested in their content, of course. There are no titles on their covers or spines, which could give some hints about the topic. Their haptic quality and the fact that they are arranged in different positions and often also slightly opened motivates the visitor not only to touch but also to take them. And we know we are allowed to do it, and Irena wants us to take the books. To take them to read. To get at least some information about the author, the title and the contents. What follows this grabbing is irritation, maybe curiosity. Each book consists of customers' original bills, just bound together. So there are no titles except of Aroma and Wally, Baumax and Biller, depending on the country from which Laator took the bills. And in fact, she collected them from almost all over the world. And the authors simply put the print of the cash desk. In fact, our economic system. Also, each bill is individual and also a personal document. They are bound together into a superior structure. There is no way to slip away or escape. Knowledge as part of the installation's title is not surprising in connection with books. Books are, over centuries, stores of knowledge. But what about the second part, the limited responsibility society? This pushes us into the center of Irena Laator's artistic work, her project of a society of unlimited responsibility. What does this mean? At the beginning of the 21st century, Irena Laator made a small discovery, small with a huge potential. The names of private companies almost all over the world carry a small addition, normally and mostly unnoticed in abbreviated form. And I quote Irena Laator Pejović, In the Serbo-Croatian language, this title is called, I can say it, DOO. In France and in Italy, it has literally the same meaning as Société à responsabilité limitée or Società a responsabilità limitata. Translating this literally into English, the result is Limited Responsibility Society, a company whose liability is limited to the financial contributions of its members. But in Great Britain, this meaning changes slightly to limited liability partnership, and in the United States becomes limited liability company. In Germany, Gesellschaft mit beschränkter Haftung, and in Russia, I have to abbreviate it, OOO. Irena Laator takes this term from the economic world and gives these tiny letter configurations an ethically and politically explosive power through art. Above, related to the opening miniature of Christine de Pizan's Le Livre de la Cité des Dames, I said, reading and working, the world of books and the world of politics are intertwined. Related to Irena Laator's knowledge of limited responsibility society, we must say the world of art and the world of politics are intertwined. By taking these simple objects from everyday social life and transforming them into a work of art, they receive not just an aesthetic but also an ethical quality of power. Through this process of artistic research, Laator deconstructs the current economic system. And she marks this through a tiny shift of spelling, adding the prefix in English "un", and ends as a kind of utopia or heterotopia or dystopia in a society of unlimited responsibility. Irena Laator describes this process as follows. Seen from a wider contextual level, if we understand space and society as relational processes, always under construction, by inverting the term of limitation and transforming it into a more gradual and generous notion of unlimitation, and we then, as a plurality, able to at least visualize or verbalize, if not produce, the idea of a possible, differently established society of unlimited responsibility. This quote addresses an essential aspect which is crucial to my understanding of art as well as my art historical methodology. It points to the role of the viewer, the recipient, the reader. Irena speaks of an us and not just I do or something like this. Till now I highlighted the relationship of the two parts of the miniature and or the two aspects of Irena's knowledge. The world of books, art, the world of politics, economics, and how they are, according to our two artists, linked. But there is a third point. The form, how they involve their viewer readers. This means us. Maybe you noticed this aspect already, but till now I didn't make it explicit. Let's come once more to this miniature from the Livre de la Cité des Dames. And let's have another look at Christine de Pizan in the studio. We said she was just standing up from reading to welcome her visitors. She is in an attentive eye contact with the three virtues. But her body also turns slightly to the audience, the viewer readers. This means she also communicates with the readers of Le Livre de la Cité des Dames. The same is true in respect of the female figures. They not only face Christine, but their bodies are also turned slightly towards the viewer. By this, the artist of this miniature, it is the so-called City of Ladies Master, does not just present an allegorical scenery to the viewer reader, but he or she involves each of them into this mysterious encounter with Lady Reason, Lady Rectitude, and Lady Justice. The viewer reader becomes part of the story of the City of Ladies, guided by Christine de Pizan. So, coming back to Irena Laator's knowledge of the limited responsibility society, and I show a picture from a seminar I had in Linz together with Irena, and there are some students from Linz, maybe they are also joining us at the moment on Zoom. Describing the art piece, I have indicated the tension between an initially more erratic impression and then rising curiosity of the viewer. And here we see how the students are dealing with the books. As the first summary, I was comparing two artists, two researchers, so to say, Christine de Pizan and Irena Laator Pejović, focused on two exemplary artworks, an autograph of the Livre de la Cité de Dames of Christine de Pizan, about 1405, and knowledge of the Limited Responsibility Society from 2009 onwards. Of course, regarding the phenomenological aspect, they are completely different. Two different forms of appearance, but there are striking parallels in respect of the artistic concepts. A, the way how the world of books, art, and the world of politics and economics are intertwined, and B, the way how they involve their viewer readers. And therein also lies the concept of responsibility. Not to speak just about her own responsibility as an artist, but also to involve the readers, the viewers, into this awareness of responsibility. And we have to reflect this in a twofold direction. A, from the point of view of the artist, this is the more obvious. Irena Laator Pejović and Christine de Pizan both not only produce beautiful art, so l'art pour l'art, but also assume their social responsibility to a high degree. If I wanted to elaborate and justify this, I would have to look at the entire artistic and literary oeuvre in each case. In respect of Irena Laator, I think you all know more or less the artistic commitment of this Montenegrinian artist. In respect of Christine de Pizan, I just want to add that she produced more than 40 volumes, so not just the Livre de la Cité de Dames, but about 40 books. And that she was part of the European Querelle de Femmes, so she was also politically engaged. At the moment, for my argument, it is just important to be aware of the fact of artistic responsibility, in this sense, responsibility of the artist. But there is another crucial point, the responsibility of the viewer. The way how these artworks involve the viewer readers forces their awareness of societal responsibility as well. I would like to expand this argument into two directions, A, memory, and B, community. For both, we can turn to other book projects of Irena Laator Pejović and compare them with Le Livre de la Cité de Dames and related works. Corresponding to the place where we are at the moment, I will choose one of what I would like to call Irena Laator's money tomes. Heavy volumes containing bundles of banknotes, and again, there are fascinating lines that can be drawn to the Le Livre de la Cité de Dames. So again, the two books together, on the left hand, Le Livre de la Cité de Dames, and on the right hand, After Memory. After Memory, first seen in its closed state, gives the impression of a precious old book like an antique, and that's already the first line in this case, even to the formal appearance. The yellowed pages, the elaborate thread stitching, and the light brown cloth binding, all this points to a piece from the 19th century or even older. It takes us back into the world of an aristocratic or monastery library. Its content consists, materially speaking, of 1,800 older and newer 200 dinar banknotes. Therefore, still materially speaking, the book has a value of 360,000 dinar. Laator borrowed the then still valid banknotes from the National Bank of Serbia and offered to the bank to bring the same amount back, but in the form of a work of art, under the condition that it would be permanently exhibited in the bank's Museum of Money. A typical Laator gesture, so to speak, connecting the world of art, in the form of a book, and the world of economics, politics, and in this sense definitely connected with knowledge of the limited responsibility society and related projects. The second striking line lies in the design of the very banknote. As almost every banknote, it bears the portrait of an important person. I think you all know it. The Serbian 200 dinar bill features the portrait of a woman, it is Irena Laator Pejović, one of the most famous artists of the Balkans at the turn of the 19th and 20th century. However, her national importance is not only based on her art, but also on her commitment as a nurse during the First World War. This is the reason why on the banknote she is primarily shown in a military uniform. In addition, also it portrays also the artist holding her palette. The significance of this important woman and female artist is no doubt the reason why Irena Laator used exactly this banknote for her first money book. And this is the point that brings us back to Christine de Pizan's book of the City of Ladies. We have again le livre de la cité de dames, and now the opening miniature of the second part of the book and of the third part of the book. This livre de la cité de dames is a treasure, so to say, of stories about important women out of mythology, the Bible, or history and contemporary France. Among them, artists as well, Anastasia, for example, is the most famous one. So the content of this book are the stories of these important women. And again, it is worth to look at these miniatures a bit more closely. Each of the miniature marks the beginning of one of the three parts of the book, which underlines their conceptual importance. The miniature at the beginning of part 2 depicts the exterior view of a section of the almost finished city. A craftsman is still working on the roof here. In a typical manner of a medieval townscape. One has to be aware that this image is very small, covering just one text column. It measures about 10 to 8 centimeters. Nevertheless, again, very accurate in detail. Its color and mood are similar to the picture in part 1, perhaps less so than. It shows one leading figure and 5 guided figures. The leading person, a prettily dressed and crowned lady with an alert and active attitude, is, according to the text, Lady Rectitude. This figure wears a red dress, very similar to that of Lady Reason in the second scene of part 1, and in this way creates a visual relationship between building the foundations and now moving into the city. Lady Rectitude stands in front of the open city gate and takes one of the other ladies by the hand, leading the group into their new place of living. Based on her appearance and posture, the figure almost at the end of the line is Christine. But here, again in the blue dress. But here she appears quieter. She is no longer the protagonist in the narrative, but one of the many waiting to be guided into the new city. The third miniature opens part 3. It depicts 2 groups of ladies at the entrance of the now finished city. Again, the direction of movement travels from left to right. The scenery speaks of expectation and arrival, with empty space in between. Again, the viewer reader first notices the architecture, which, because of its high horizon, makes the buildings appear large and imposing. Looking at the picture, you find yourself between the two groups of women. Your eyes wander from the group that is waiting to the group that is arriving and back again. The ladies now inhabiting the city are guided by Lady Justice, who again wears the red dress and who, upon recognizing the final group of holy women, guided by the Queen Mary, drops to her knees to greet them. Her entourage, the third person again, Christine, so we have her here, also seems to be well aware of the special importance of the arriving ladies. They all suddenly retreat slightly with their upper voice. Some of the arriving ladies can be identified by their attributes, and it is very interesting to see which women are highlighted here. The woman in the first row from left to right is Mary Magdalene, messenger of Christ's resurrection and therefore the first female apostle. And the second, Catherine of Alexandria, a virgin, martyr and noted scholar, and therefore also a patron of philosophical faculties. And untypically, Mary is not depicted with the Christ child, but with a scepter and a book. It is not, so to say, humility and Christian charity that are emphasized, but the intellectual profile of these holy women. They are also all depicted in self-confidently upright posture with golden nimbuses as far as the eye can see. Relating these images to Irena Laator's books and their relationship to the economic world, one could even say that the body of this book consists of the qualities, deeds and achievements of these female heroes, in the same manner as they are described as the bricks of the city to come. So in one case, a material treasure, the memory of an important woman and the artistic value, Irena Laator, and in the other case, a treasure of the tradition of important women, which is building the city to come, for which, I repeat, also the viewer, readers are involved. Another book project of Irena is worth mentioning. The Society of Unlimited Responsibility and Ecce Mundi. The Society of Unlimited Responsibility is a small booklet, so DIN A5, a bit less wide, with exactly this title, The Society of Unlimited Responsibility. Created in 2006, she developed it further to an all-over wall painting, technically speaking, ink and pencil on canvas and then pinned to the walls, the floor and the ceiling, as part of her installation for the Montenegrin pavilion in the 55th Venice Biennale in 2013, titled Ecce Mundi. So this is the room installation. Let's stay with the book version first, as its initial concept and because of its greater closeness to Christine de Pizan's world of books. In contrast to Christine de Pizan's heavy leather-bound volume, Irena Laator's cool notebook with a thin cardboard cover but nevertheless stitched binding looks unpretentious. It contains quadrille paper sheets covered with little stick figures, one figure for each square, page by page from the beginning to the end. To be precise, some squares contain just part of a figure or only a dot. Skimming through the pages, you get the impression that they are densely crowded, but nonetheless with some empty space in between. In this way, it doesn't convey the feeling of being constrained or trapped, but of a waving fluidity. Although all the stick figures have almost the same shape, they adopt a variety of postures, upright, diagonal, upside down, and so on. The viewer is confronted with an all-over mode on the one hand, but with a fascinating variety on the other. As the tiny figures stretch out their arms, you get the impression that they are joining hands. Irena Laator's idea of community, maybe. To quote the artist herself, the relational co-constitutive spatiality between society and individual and vice versa is made visible in their co-productive temporal evolution. So lots of individuals, but nevertheless interconnected by the underlying structure, quadrille paper in this case, but also by their gestures. The original piece is a drawing. As an art piece, it exists as a printed multiple, perhaps a takeaway, and therefore it passes into the hands of many. Here once more the view into this pavilion. Here the communal gesture takes a three-dimensional quality, an even more architectural form, placing the visitor in the midst of this fabric of interrelationships. So as a visitor, you stand in the midst of this taking hands. This brings me, as the final step of my lecture, to another work of Christine de Pizan, written immediately after the Livre de la Cité des Dames, so closely related to the Livre de la Cité des Dames that one could say it is its second part. It is Le Trésor de la Cité des Dames, and of course it's just the word treasure that is interesting to connect with Irena Laator's work. It is also an autograph, so an original manuscript of Christine de Pizan. Treasure, so the title of this book, is a dazzling term. We spoke about it briefly before. This story, as it is described in the prologue, goes as follows, so I tell another story. We see here on the left side Christine, and there is an encounter. I will explain. Christine, exhausted by the work of the just completed Livre de la Cité des Dames, is visited again by the three virtues, Dame Raison, Dame Rectitude, and Dame Justice, who ask her to write another book. This book should now directly address contemporary women, providing them with moral advice as to how to behave in private and public life. In other words, in this kind of mirror for princes, but for women. What is uncommon about this mirror of princes compared to other examples of this genre is the fact that the author addresses all women, so not just kings and aristocratic ladies, but women of all classes, ranging from queens to business women to prostitutes. So the whole hierarchy of the medieval society. 2 points are remarkable here. First, that this book, also with its hierarchization from queens to princesses, aristocrats, women of the middle and lower classes, also this hierarchization, it mentions women of all classes with interest and respect. And second, that it does not just mention and speak to them, but it demands from all members of this society that they live according to valid moral principles. These moral duties differ according to the social status. A queen has other obligations than a merchant woman, a prostitute others than an aristocrat, both in individual and societal respects. We may call this, Irena's work in mind, responsibility. A responsibility of each single person within and for the societal pool. Let's compare Irena Laator's vision of a future society, this booklet of the Society of Unlimited Responsibility, as well as the Rome installation, Ecce Mundi, with the opening miniature of this treasure. So, looking a bit closer, we immediately have the same impression of clarity, freshness and precision as in the miniatures discussed above. And it follows the same artistic concept, in this case just one miniature for the whole book. Again, the picture spans both text columns and covers the upper half of the page. Again, the miniature is divided into two scenes. Here, presenting on the left side Christine, who was just sleeping and is now awakened by the three virtues, and on the right side, a classroom situation. This awakening situation is, I think, very funny. So she really pulls Christine on her arm and says, "So get up, you have to write another book." The right-hand side describes a learning scene with a total of 11 women who are clearly identified as belonging to different social classes by their clothing and head coverings. And we see in frontal view here another virtue as their teacher, and this is Dame Prudence, Prudentia in Latin. This means Christine de Pizan introduces here another female virtue, one who is characterized by a specific intelligence. This Lady Prudence represents worldly knowledge. So knowledge that you need for everyday life. Certain aspects are worth emphasizing. Firstly, we meet the same Christine and the same virtues whom we know already from the opening scene of the livre, dressed in an elegant but basically modest manner. However, this scene appears a bit more private, insofar as Christine is stretched out on her bed, and also a bit more intimate, even a little familiar, insofar as one of the virtues grabs Christine's arm as if she wanted to make her get up. They already know each other, so is the feeling. And the situation speaks more of a continuation than of a beginning. Secondly, interesting is this Lady Prudence. She is presented as a regina, so as a king, in a red dress and blue mantle, with a golden crown sitting enthroned on her cathedral. And thirdly, the pupils are all female and embody women of all social grades. When we look once more at this women's assembly in the treasure through the lens of Irena Laator's quadrille booklet, we may discover the delicately executed title pattern on the back wall. So this, and remember this book with the little figures. So the back wall and a less explicit wall on the floor. Again, there are squares everywhere. In Christine de Pizan's treasure, they are executed in lapis lazuli and gold, the most precious colors in medieval art, as we know, which were often used to mark the transcendental world. Christine de Pizan does not escape into a Christian hereafter. She builds her city in this earthly world. But she, or better to say the city of Ladies Master, seems to have taken these characteristics of medieval art and transfers them into the era of early Renaissance to mark the utopian quality of the situation described. It is Dame Prudence now who is enthroned on her cathedral, surrounded by this shimmering background. As a final gesture of my talk, allow me to show you another booklet of Irena Laator, similar to the stick figure community, but with a different appearance and effect. Light in Space from 2006. Developed in a kind of automatic writing with colored pencils in both hands, the artist filled each little square with a single color. Partly intensive and accurate, partly sketchy and bright, Red stands beside blue and yellow, orange beside green and violet, and so on. In sum, a cheerful gathering of the universe of pigments. And when we compare these two, the treasure and light in space, so we have some utopian quality, so to say, but both situated within worldly life and its demands. Thank you.